faceless comedy. Find it by searching.
Good evening and welcome to the show, which for many has become that unwelcome intrusion into an otherwise perfectly enjoyable weekend. In this, the final stretch of our 2-month sentence, as national attention focuses on Michael Heseltine, he reveals the mystery substance he applies to his hair to give it that slicked back look. Meanwhile, Nicholas Ridley prepares himself for the expected influx of foreign visitors that will accompany the opening of the Channel Tunnel. Despite the setback of Terry Marsh's acquittal, police searching for Frank Warren's assailant say they have a new suspect. As befits our last show, we have the ultimate in guests. Our first team captain, currently 5 games to 2 down in the series, is well aware that a win tonight would make it 5-3, so there's everything to play for, Ian Hislop. And with Ian, a woman who over the years has been a journalist, a columnist, a feminist, a satirist, a horticulturalist, a postmodernist and a post-feminist revisionist, but tonight I'm afraid she's simply a panellist, Germaine Greer. And our other team captain, the Cheshire Cat of the comedy world, Paul Merton. And with Paul, MP for Newham North West, not only a member of the Labour Party, but also a socialist, obviously a stickler for old values, Tony Banks. 2 points if you're right, no points, rather obviously, if you're wrong, and 1 point if you're so wrong it's laughable. So let's sweep majestically into the first round. Some juicy snippets of news footage to identify. Ian and Germaine, I'm not sure if you managed to catch this story this week, but can you name this man?
I think that Mrs. Thatcher will lead this party into the next election, and I will put money on her winning it.
There is no vacancy, and I don't think there's going to be a vacancy this side of the general election. I think Mrs. Thatcher will lead us into the next general election campaign, and the Conservative Party will win it.
I think Mrs. Thatcher will lead the Conservatives into that election. I've said it for years, I still believe it, and I think the Conservative Party are going to win it. That is my position, and I will not move from it. I'm sorry to disappoint you.
That's a man talking absolute rubbish, so he's an obvious contender for leader of the Tory party.
Yes.
What he said, actually, to be fair to him, I don't know why one wants to be fair to him, but he said he wouldn't stand except unless there were unforeseen circumstances, and Geoffrey Howe made an interesting speech, which no one could possibly have foreseen, so...
any idea, I'll give you 2 points, but for an extra point, have you any idea what his full name is?
John Major.
Not as far as I'm aware. Any idea?
I think it's Michael, I'm a very rich, ambitious bastard Heseltine.
Not so much satire, more gratuitous abuse. Really. I'll tell you, his name is Michael Ray Dibdin Heseltine. Can you imagine having a Prime Minister called Dibdin? Other contenders who may yet put in for the second stage ballot include John Major and Douglas Hurd, jointly being referred to in Conservative circles as the Dream Ticket, presumably because it's so hard to stay awake in their company. Paul and Tony, who's this person in raptures about?
He's terribly good, you see, because he does a lot of it, I think. But the technicians in the business have already told me he's quite formidable off autocue, because he actually reads off autocue, and you really think that he's not. And there are very few people who can do that.
Mm-hmm. It's, can I have a knighthood, please, really, isn't it? It's Prince Charles he's talking about, who did this thing, they did a video together about the environment. And most of the sort of papers said Prince Charles is absolutely wonderful and he has the timing of a comic genius. And there was one paper that said he was a load of crap. So, I mean, if the monarchy doesn't work out, you can always do a sitcom with Windsor Davis or something. At Home with the Windsors, perhaps.
Yeah. Yes, it's that comic figure everyone loves to laugh at as soon as he opens his mouth, who helped John Cleese this week with an environmental video. Ian and Germaine, what's this bright new idea that you might one day be glad of?
Oh, it's the funeral of BSB. Unveiling a plaque.
I think it's actually the idea to bury television celebrities in the equivalent of Poets' Corner. Hard to think what it would be called.
I hope they're going to bury Jeremy Beadle. It's a very good idea.
Yes, it's called Media Corner.
Angus Dayton's going in.
Whoever he is.
Quite.
Yes, the inauguration of... yes, it's the inauguration of what Westminster Abbey are calling the Media Corner, which is apparently a graveyard for entertainers, rather like the Royal Variety performance. Paul and Tony, what's this rather low-key family occasion about?
Oh, yes, this is the wedding of Emperor Akihito in Japan.
Well, it's enthronement, isn't it?
And here they're all trying to get into the reception.
Not strictly speaking a wedding.
The enthronement.
It is the enthronement, yes.
May
well
he
done.
live for 15,000 years is the traditional cry.
That's right.
Apparently
yes.
he's a god.
I didn't know that.
Well, there, not very many people do, I suppose, but...
He's the god of
it's a sort
interior design.
Yes, it's the new Japanese Emperor Akihito, who was crowned in Tokyo this week, amid spontaneous riots by several thousand protesters wearing the same hats. Millions of people now regard him as a living god, even though he insists he isn't, which is, of course, the complete reverse of Robert Maxwell. The Japanese
That's
Prime
terribly
Minister...
unfair.
Oh, no, it isn't. The Japanese Prime Minister stood in front of the Emperor and shouted, Banzai, 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 which was officially translated as, May His Imperial Highness live for 10,000 years. That's Banzai meaning May His, Banzai meaning Imperial Highness, and Banzai meaning live for 10,000 years. Very versatile language, Japanese.
I thought Banzai meant die English a pig dog.
I think it means anything you like, actually, as far as I can make out. So that brings us ceremoniously to the end of round one, or Banzai Banzai, as the Japanese would say. And Paul and Tony seem to have a flawless 4, and Ian and Germaine also have a perfect 4.
This is going to be the week.
Well, round 2 beckons, but before we succumb, it's time to run a couple of captionless photographs past our teams. Paul and Tony, this is yours. Ian and Germaine, this is for you. And between now and the end of the programme, it's your unenviable task to find a ribald and poignant caption or two to fit. So let's tread soft now as we enter the unsavoury world of tabloid headlines, amply illustrated by this. A tomato dials 999. Paul, what's this about?
Well, this is about a tomato that dialed 999. The police are very worried because all kinds of vegetables are interfering. The tomato was arrested, accused of wasting police time, and is now doing 15 years in prison.
Yes.
Or a tomato plant was growing above an answer phone, and some drips from the tomato fell into the answer phone, short-circuited the system, and so, of course, it automatically got through to the local police station because they assumed somebody was nicking the answer phone. They turned up, and it was an empty house and just this tomato plant there. So, strictly speaking, it didn't dial 999.
No, they were lying.
They were lying.
Yes. Well pointed out.
The West Midlands Police, I believe.
It's not often that vegetables phone the operator. Normally you phone the operator and get connected to a vegetable. Tony Banks, a slightly meatier story for you.
Yes.
Dirty Tricks probe into Lib Dems.
Well, it's a very serious matter, because allegedly Tower Hamlets Liberals put out a leaflet during the last council elections that bore the imprint of the Labour Party, telling scurrilous lies about my party, such as that if elected we would do something to repair council homes, that we would appoint Derek Hatton as the chief executive of the council, and that we would twin Tower Hamlets with Baghdad. So there's now a court of inquiry. So allegedly those things might have happened. Very serious matter.
A very serious matter, absolutely, that we shouldn't make jokes about, but we're going to anyway. 2 points, yes, it was a document that was packed full of socialist policies, which was the main reason it was spotted as a fraud. The Liberal Democratic Parliamentary Party have now distanced themselves from the 15 local councillors, and Paddy Ashdown regretted that a tiny splinter group might have been formed as a result, but he was still proud to be leader of it. Germaine, rivalling the tomato plant for the top story of the week. It's the pig or me, says wife.
This is a reference to a Vietnamese. The pig is a Vietnamese.
Oh, right, yes,
pig.
Vietnamese pig, yes.
They're very round pigs that are covered with enormous bales of fat, and people find them charming.
Zoologist, is it?
I think this pig lived in a hotel in Devon, or somewhere like that, and kept getting into bed with the guests, which was all right. It was just when the pig got in bed with the hotelier that his wife thought things had gone too far.
A bit too far, yes, that's right. Hotelier Stuart Hughes, in fact, who named his pet pig Cyril after a certain well-known Liberal MP for Rochdale. The pig, we believe, is now going to sue. His wife has run out of patience because apparently the pig has taken to strolling into guests' rooms uninvited and jumping into bed with them. I wonder if he's ever been on tour with a heavy metal band. Finally, in this round, Ian, think of a number on holiday pleads BT.
This is a directive to the chairman of BT. It's for the profits for this year.
Any idea?
Well, we think actually it's BT trying to encourage its employees to indulge in petty theft, because they're offering them money if they bring back stolen telephone directories from their hotel rooms.
British Telecom International Director Inquiries have announced a new method of updating their information. They're asking anyone who goes abroad on holiday to pick up a local phone directory and bring it back with them. So they'll end up with 4,000 directories from the Benidorm area and none at all from Warsaw. Still, it's nice to know in this fast-moving world of technology that British Telecom retain a certain old-world charm of complete inefficiency. Presumably, if you need a number in Athens, the operator could well say, I'm afraid we don't have that, but my sister-in-law comes back from there on Tuesday. Which brings us cascading to the end of that round, and I can inform you that Paul and Tony have a healthy 10, and Ian and Germaine slightly under the weather with 6.
Oh!
And so we trip daintily into round 3. Each team has a disparate selection of misleading images, all of which adds up to a major news story of the week. Can they identify which one? Almost certainly not, if past weeks are anything to go by. Ian and Germaine, prove me wrong.
Put your sweet lips a little closer to the phone.
It's a telephone. It's a tomato calling in.
Let's pretend that we're together.
Oh, we know what that is.
Yep.
I'll tell them
We know what that is too.
Put it all together and you got...
This is a wonderful story which came just before Geoffrey Howe's fascinating speech, that's a man called Richard Needham, who's a Tory MP.
It is?
6th Earl of Kilmaggie. No, I'm sorry, Kilmore.
He was in his car talking to his wife, and she said, will you be home for supper, dear? And he said, it all depends if the silly cow resigns, which is a reference to Mrs. Thatcher. And this was taped by paramilitaries. You've obviously got nothing else to do except listen in to Mr. Needham all day.
And being released as a single. Gazza's doing it.
Bound to flop then.
Christmas
and
yes.
It was dropped in on a local broadcasting station.
He was lucky to get through on his car phone, actually, wasn't he?
Mrs. Thatcher is quoted as saying the matter has been dropped, as I'm sure he will be from a great height. Onto something sharp. Paul and Tony.
He's actually accepted her apology, because she, at the moment, needs every vote she can get.
Paul and Tony, hold very tight, please.
Hold very tight, please. Ting, ting. Hold very tight, please.
John Major, bust. Oh, Reg Varney. And Bob Grant.
King George VI.
King George VI, doing vital war work. Mathematics.
Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Government plan to cut down the bus queues.
What's his way? You wait for a challenge to Margaret Thatcher, and suddenly three come along at the same time.
That's right.
John Major used to be a bus conductor, and he got the sack because he wasn't very good at counting up the fares.
That's exactly what happened. It was John Major. He was turned down. He was turned down a job as a bus conductor at Camberwell Garage in 1961 because he couldn't add up.
Well, that's 2 points. That's what I said.
Yes, that's what I said.
You said
of
1
course,
point.
as Chancellor of the Exchequer, you don't need to be able to add up. Just take away. And so we spring on now to our archive round. Ian and Germaine, straight down the line question. What happened next for you?
How many? 1.5 million. It'll go up to 3 million.
The next thing that happened is that Nicholas Ridley belched. No, I didn't mean that. He didn't do that. He interrupted, I think, and tried to correct her. And then it got very confused, and in the end, Mrs. Thatcher had to go for the higher figure. But I can't remember what... I thought it was support for people who weren't able to pay the poll tax.
No, I think it was actually overseas aid. Mrs. Thatcher got the figures totally wrong, but she couldn't admit she'd got them wrong, so...
They had to be changed.
All those foreign countries got an extra 50 grand.
Well, that sounds pretty familiar. Let's have a look and see what happened.
How many? 1.5 million. It'll go up to 3 million. That is to...
1.25. It's 1.25 million, muttered Mr. Ridley.
Well, you better put it up to 1.5 so it can go up to 3, haven't you?
He tried to make light of it, reaching for his wallet for a personal contribution, a £10 note. She was not amused.
Teach people to give me a wrong briefing, won't it? Right.
Dear, oh dear.
Yes, that was Mrs. Thatcher there, putting Nicholas Ridley wrong when he stupidly got something right. Paul and Tony, not so much what happened next for you as what the hell's going on now.
Nuclear missiles, is it?
We're actually, it looks like Saddam Hussein's bodyguard juggling with nuclear bombs, isn't it?
Well, geographically, you're not that far out.
That's the great English thing of getting Iran and Iraq confused, isn't it? That's Iranian, not Iraqi.
It is.
I thought we just sucked up to both of them, generally.
Well, I thought we despised both of them equally.
Oh, right.
Well, both of these things,
but we still...
and yet neither. Do you know, Tony, before I hand it over and allow Germaine to get it completely right?
No,
completely wrong.
Unless it was... because Ron Brown's over in that part of the world at the moment, isn't he? You know, my colleague who dropped the mace, perhaps they were showing him how to actually keep it firmly in his hand. I haven't the foggiest idea.
No, it is a tricky one, but...
Well, I think it's a version of the... This sounds ridiculous. The Iranian Zur-Khaneh, which is the Temple of Strength, and this is a part of a religious ritual.
I'll give you 2 points of that. That's exactly what's happening, and it's actually a group of Iranian bankers, that famous Cockney rhyming slang. At Bank Mali in Tehran, the Iranian equivalent of the Bank of England. Wouldn't fancy discussing my overdraft with one of them. Yes, the bank that likes to say, oof. So at the end of that round, a quick update. Well, Ian and Germaine are still in the peak of fitness with 12, and Paul and Tony are definitely on the slide with 11. It's our barely celebrated odd one out round now, in which each of you is given 4 famous faces, 3 of which have some dark secret in common. Paul, a particularly unpleasant mixture for you. Lord Lucan, Joseph Mengele, Shergar, and Jeremy Beadle.
Well, Lord Lucan sort of like done a runner, and, well, Shergar did as well, and Joseph, what's his name, and everybody wished Jeremy Beadle would.
Yes, they've all gone missing is the right answer. In descending order of awfulness, Shergar was kidnapped by the IRA, who did away with him after he refused to talk. Lord Lucan's disappearing trick is all too well known. And after committing unspeakable acts of barbarity against humanity, Joseph Mengele fled to South America and Jeremy Beadle to LWT. So, Tony, a prestigious selection for you. Prince Philip, Prince Charles, Peter Sellers and Mozart.
3 of these are Masons. Well, 2 of them are dead, so they won't be able to sue me, even if they're not. But Prince Philip, Peter Sellers and Mozart, and I think that Prince Charles quite rightly decided he didn't want to be a Mason and rolled his left trouser leg up and show his right tit, so he opted out.
He didn't want to look stupid, so he did a video with John Cleese.
Yes, absolutely right. Prince Charles is the only one who isn't a Mason, thereby failing to keep up the family tradition dating back to Jack the Ripper. His father is a Mason, as indeed is the Duke of Kent, who's the chairman of the Masons, or Grand Chief Imperial Rottweiler, as he's doubtless called. Germaine, take a deep breath for your hideous foursome. Nigel Lawson, Nicholas Ridley, Cecil Parkinson and Dennis Thatcher.
They've all slept with the Prime Minister except Dennis Thatcher.
I know this one. I've worked this one out.
It's too easy.
Parliamentary wit not dead.
They've all been married twice, except Cecil Parkinson, who should have been.
Yes, they split up with their first wives and remarried. Yes, absolutely right. Dennis Thatcher preferred Maggie to his first wife. God knows what she must have been like. And Ridley preferred his second to his first, and Nigel Lawson named his daughter from his first marriage Nigella in honour of himself. Just as well he didn't name her in honour of his wife, who was called Salmon, because she would have been called Salmonella. Cecil Parkinson left his first wife on several occasions, but he always came back, generally at about 2 o'clock in the morning. Ian, a slightly surreal one for you, but there is a connection. Sylvester Stallone, Meryl Streep, Robert De Niro, and a can of pedigree chum.
Oh, well, that's... they're all actors. The one in the bottom is Dustin Hoffman, doing a bit of method acting. So the answer is they're all capable of acting except Stallone. No?
No, not right.
They're all big meaty chunks, except Stallone.
No.
Oh, I know. That's Shergar in the bottom right, isn't it?
I'm sure you'll be hearing from their solicitors very shortly. I'll tell you the answer. The answer is that 3 of them are famous Hollywood film stars and the other is a tin of dog food. Well, it's the last show of the series, so on that mind-bogglingly simple note, we check the score, which is, well, Paul and Tony are streaking ahead with 15, and Ian and Germaine are still streaking behind with 14. Well, this is when we come back. And so as the suspense builds to an almost unnoticeable climax, we come to the final round. Each team gets a set of the week's headlines, but with a word or two missing. They have to identify the missing words or come up with something better. So, Ian and Germaine, you seem to be what can only be described as losing.
Again, there's a change.
Yes, which means you have to go first. So, eyes down, look in. Tarzan, he's no good in a what blasts Willy?
In a scrap?
No.
3 in a bed romp. So I thought it was the sun there.
Crisis is the answer, I'm afraid.
Crisis.
Next, Thatcher favours what as her successor?
Thatcher?
Yeah.
Herself, yeah.
You think so?
Actually,
yes,
she said Heard.
Heard announced last
From
night
the
that he
left,
definitely
yes.
wouldn't stand in the second ballot. So look out for him in the second ballot.
There you go. Next, crackdown on peril of killer what in roads?
Bollards.
Royals, we've decided it is. Killer royals. No, killer holes.
Holes is correct.
Full of buses there.
Finally, schools kept going by what? Any idea?
By dedicated teachers, underpaid and undervalued. Yeah. My sister's a teacher, can I just say hello?
Rubber bands is not right either. Raffles is the answer, I'm afraid.
Raffles.
Good. Right.
What's a
Paul
nightclub
and Tony?
doing, supporting a school?
I thought he was a thief, actually. Right, Paul and Tony, your turn. I will stay what for years?
Vile.
Mad.
It's
On.
Lucid.
on. That's correct.
On.
Little word. On.
On.
Next, Fury at Anderton ban on what?
Beards.
Rupert. Mine, it's ours.
Who's actually going to
Where Lucy?
On
Germaine's just woken up.
Rupert Bear.
Rupert is correct.
I was stitched up, he said.
And he was right. Next, I was what, says DJ Derek.
Interesting.
I'm going to keep it
Rasputin in a previous lifestyle.
Conned. is
Conned.
the answer. Conned.
We all were.
And lastly, Major tries to keep what alive?
Tebbit.
Yes. Eku.
Eku is very good. Eku Brute. And with all that, we find that a remarkable transformation in the score has failed to materialise. So this week's arch villains are Ian and Germaine with 18, and this week's brave heroes are Paul and Tony with 21.
You got everyone right. Have you got an idea for that?
So, congratulations to Paul and Tony, and commiserations to Ian and Germaine. And, of course, congratulations to Paul, who is our overall winner, so he wins a pair of overalls. But the end is not yet nigh, because we still have our much-loathed caption competition to settle. Paul and Tony, what did you think up for this?
Mark Thatcher drives Michael Heseltine home.
Very good. Ian and Germaine, what about yours?
I thought this was an optimistic one. Gulf crisis over. I'll come quietly, says Saddam Hussein.
Yes, well, on that optimistic note, it's time to say thank you very much to our guests. All's well that ends, so it just remains for me to say thank you to Ian Hislop and Germaine Greer, Paul Merton and Tony Banks. And on a final note, disturbing news from the Home Office after it's revealed that Ernest Saunders has developed an allergy to prison food. In the Gulf, before their historic interview, Saddam Hussein warns Trevor McDonald what will happen if he asks the wrong questions. Meanwhile, back home, the 1st Airborne Division of Her Majesty's Royal Highland cartoon characters sets off for Saudi Arabia. And in Moscow, amid growing civil unrest, President Gorbachev denies rumours that he is having an affair with Dennis Thatcher.
It's the only sex he got that week.
So it's goodbye from me, and it looks like it could be goodbye from her.
Poppycock.
Goodbye.